Have you been waiting for your express entry invitation and wondering why the draws suddenly seem smaller, less frequent, and much harder to predict? Well, you're not imagining things. The first half of 2026 saw one of the biggest express entry invitation waves in recent Canadian immigration history. Thousands of candidates received invitations to apply, CRS scores dropped in some categories, and it looked like Canada was finally accelerating immigration. But now, everything is changing. Draw sizes are shrinking, CRS cutoffs are climbing, some immigration categories have completely disappeared, and major express entry reforms are expected to pause the system later this year. So what exactly is happening? Is express entry slowing down? Will CRS scores ever come down again? Should you still wait for a CEC draw, or is it time to explore other pathways? In today's video, we're breaking down everything you need to know about why express entry draws are expected to slow down for the rest of 2026, what the latest numbers actually tell us, which categories are most affected, how the upcoming reforms could impact your application, and what you should realistically expect if you're still waiting for an invitation. So make sure you watch until the very end, because if you're planning to immigrate to Canada through express entry, this information could completely change your strategy. Let's get started. The first half of 2026 was record-breaking. The first 6 months of 2026 were incredibly aggressive for express entry. By the first week of July, Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, or IRCC, had already issued approximately 97,000 invitations to apply. To understand how significant that is, consider this. During the entire year of 2025, IRCC issued approximately 114,000 invitations. That means by early July 2026, Canada was already just 17,000 invitations away from matching the entire previous year's total, even though there were still 5.5 months left in the year. Naturally, many candidates assumed this pace would continue throughout 2026. However, the numbers now show that this simply isn't sustainable. The numbers clearly show the slowdown has already started. Let's look at how invitation numbers changed throughout the year. Between January and March, IRCC averaged more than 18,600 invitations every month. Then things started slowing. April dropped to around 15,800 invitations. May declined further to just over 8,200 invitations. June remained close to 9,200 invitations. And July is currently tracking at approximately 8,000 invitations based on the first week. This isn't speculation. The slowdown has already begun. If IRCC continues issuing around 8,000 to 10,000 invitations each month for the remainder of the year, total invitations in 2026 are expected to finish somewhere between 120,000 and 145,000, depending on how long future pauses last and whether inactive categories are activated. Why can't IRCC keep inviting more people? The answer lies in Canada's immigration levels plan. Canada currently plans to admit 380,000 permanent residents every year through 2028. Even if express entry performs exceptionally well, annual immigration targets remain fixed. This means there is only so much room for additional invitations. As provincial nominee program admissions increase, fewer invitations become available for federal categories like the Canadian Experience Class, French language draws, and other express entry programs. So even though early 2026 moved at record speed, IRCC eventually had to slow things down. Canadian Experience Class already exceeded last year's total. One of the biggest reasons behind the slowdown is the Canadian Experience Class, also known as CEC. So far in 2026, IRCC has already issued approximately 43,500 CEC invitations. Compare that with 35,850 invitations issued during the entire year of 2025. In other words, CEC alone has already exceeded last year's total by more than 7,000 invitations. That's a huge milestone. At the beginning of 2026, IRCC conducted massive CEC draws of 8,000, 6,000, and another 6,000 invitations. These large rounds helped Canada catch up after relatively limited CEC activity during much of 2025. Now that catch-up effort is largely complete. As a result, draw sizes have fallen dramatically. The July 7th CEC draw issued only 2,000 invitations, representing a 75% reduction compared to January. This doesn't mean CEC draws are ending. They are expected to continue. However, they will likely remain much smaller for the rest of the year. Why did IRCC front-load so many invitations? There are two major reasons. First, IRCC needed to compensate for the relatively low number of CEC invitations issued during 2025. Many CEC draws were paused last year before a large invitation round finally appeared in December. The aggressive draws early in 2026 helped make up that shortfall. Second, IRCC appears to be preparing for major express entry reforms expected later this year or in early 2027. When those reforms are implemented, the system will require technical updates and temporary downtime. By issuing a large number of invitations before those changes arrive, IRCC created enough flexibility to pause or restructure the system without falling behind its annual targets. This strategy explains why invitation numbers were so high early in the year and why they're now slowing. Why CRS scores keep increasing? Many candidates continue asking whether CEC CRS scores will come back down. Unfortunately, current data suggests that isn't likely. As of early July, the express entry pool contained more than 235,000 candidates. Within the critical CRS range of 501 to 600, there were approximately 18,600 candidates competing for invitations. If IRCC only invites 2,000 candidates during each CEC draw, thousands of highly ranked applicants remain in the pool after every round. At the same time, roughly 2,000 new high-scoring candidates enter the pool every 2 weeks through new profiles, improved language scores, and additional Canadian work experience. This creates what many experts describe as a conveyor belt effect. IRCC removes candidates from the top, while new candidates immediately replace them. Because of this constant replenishment, CRS cutoffs are expected to remain around 515 to 520 unless draw sizes increase significantly. Candidates with CRS scores between 510 and 514 should not expect CEC cutoffs to fall to their range under current conditions. French language draws continue to be the bright spot. While CEC becomes more competitive, French language draws remain one of the strongest immigration pathways. IRCC has already issued approximately 35,500 French language invitations across 7 draws during 2026. Canada has committed to increasing francophone immigration outside Quebec, with a target of 9% of permanent resident admissions. To meet that commitment, IRCC needs regular French language draws. The latest French draw issued 5,000 invitations with a CRS cutoff of 420, the highest French cutoff this year. Although competition is increasing as more candidates learn French, this score is still roughly 100 CRS points lower than recent CEC cutoffs. For candidates who can achieve NCLC 7 or higher in all 4 language skills through TEF or TCF exams, French remains one of the most realistic routes to permanent residence. Expect these draws to continue roughly once every month. 4 categories have completely disappeared. Another surprising development is that several express entry categories announced or renewed for 2026 haven't held a single draw. These include STEM occupations, transport occupations, education occupations, Canadian researchers. Some of these categories were active previously, while others were introduced earlier this year. Yet none have produced invitations so far. With every passing month, it becomes less likely these categories will receive significant invitation numbers before the upcoming reforms begin. Candidates waiting exclusively for these draws should seriously consider alternative pathways, including provincial nominee programs or other eligible category-based streams. Major express entry reforms are coming. Perhaps the biggest change expected later this year is the upcoming express entry overhaul. The reforms are expected sometime during fall 2026 or early 2027. Importantly, express entry is not shutting down. The system itself will continue operating. However, the programs inside express entry are expected to undergo major restructuring. IRCC plans to merge the Federal Skilled Worker Program, Canadian Experience Class, and Federal Skilled Trades Program into a single consolidated program. Several changes are also being discussed. Possible removal of bonus CRS points for Canadian education. Possible removal of bonus points for French proficiency. Possible removal of sibling points. Changes to spouse-related CRS calculations. And new points for certain high-wage occupations. Core CRS factors like age, work experience, education level, and language ability are expected to remain largely unchanged. However, implementing these changes will require technical updates. That means express entry draws could pause for several weeks or even several months while the system is upgraded. This is another major reason why IRCC front-loaded invitations earlier in the year. What should candidates expect for the rest of 2026? Based on current trends, here's the most realistic outlook. CEC draws are expected to continue with approximately 2,000 to 3,000 invitations per round, while CRS scores remain between 515 and 520. French language draws should continue regularly because Canada's francophone immigration commitment remains a priority. Provincial nominee program draws will continue as provinces nominate candidates through their own immigration streams. Healthcare and skilled trades categories may receive 1 or 2 additional rounds before the end of the year. Instead of predictable bi-weekly draws, candidates should expect clusters of several draws over a few consecutive days, followed by weeks of silence. Most importantly, a reform-related pause is expected sometime during the fall as IRCC updates the express entry system. Anyone expecting the rapid invitation pay seen between January and March should adjust their expectations now. That phase is effectively over. How should you respond? Rather than waiting for CRS scores to fall, successful candidates should focus on improving their profiles. Increase your language scores wherever possible. Gain additional Canadian work experience if eligible. Learn French if you have the opportunity. Explore provincial nominee programs, especially in provinces such as Ontario, Alberta, Manitoba, and British Columbia. Make sure your express entry profile stays updated because invitations are becoming less predictable, and missing an opportunity could delay your immigration plans. Current CEC processing times remain approximately 6 months, making it even more important to keep your application ready. One common question is whether everyone's CRS score will automatically change after the reforms. At this point, IRCC has not confirmed exactly how existing profiles will be recalculated. If bonus points for Canadian education, French proficiency, or siblings are removed, candidates currently receiving those points would likely see their CRS scores adjusted. Since applicants receive different combinations of bonus points, the impact would vary from one candidate to another, potentially changing their rankings in the pool. Another common question is how long the reform-related pause might last. IRCC has not announced a timeline. However, because these reforms involve merging programs and redesigning parts of the CRS system, the pause could last anywhere from several weeks to multiple months. Previous pauses during 2020 and 2021 lasted between 3 and 8 months, although those interruptions were caused by the COVID-19 pandemic rather than technical upgrades. Finally, many candidates ask whether it's still worth learning French. The answer is yes. Even though French language CRS cutoffs have risen to around 420, they remain dramatically lower than CEC cutoffs, making French one of the most accessible and strategic pathways to Canadian permanent residence. Since Canada's francophone immigration targets continue beyond 2026, this advantage is expected to remain relevant through 2027 and 2028. The first half of 2026 was a sprint. The second half will be much more measured. IRCC has already issued approximately 97,000 invitations, CEC draws have shrunk by 75%, CRS scores have climbed from 507 to 517, and major express entry reforms are approaching. Express entry is not ending. Invitations will continue. But candidates who adapt to this new reality will have the greatest chance of success. If you improve your CRS score, strengthen your language profile, consider learning French, and actively explore provincial nominee programs and category-based draws, you'll put yourself in the strongest possible position for the next invitation. And remember, waiting for CRS scores to magically fall may no longer be the best strategy. Preparation and adaptability will be the keys to Canadian immigration for the rest of 2026. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the latest Canadian immigration updates. Also, let us know your current CRS score and which express entry category you're waiting for in the comments below. Thanks for watching.